In the heart of New York City, the sprawling metropolis thrives with people from all walks of life. Amid this diversity, there are those who thrive on the facade of tolerance but harbor deep-seated prejudices. Dr. Richard Vaughan is one such individual, a well-respected heart surgeon whose polished exterior hides a simmering racism that's only known to a select few. On the other side of town lives Mrs. Clara Jackson, a woman whose life embodies warmth, resilience, and love. At 76, Clara is a retired teacher and a pillar of her predominantly black community. Her family often gathers in her modest apartment, cherishing every moment with her. The Jacksons, especially Clara's granddaughter Ava, love and admire her deeply. They couldn't have imagined that a routine hospital visit would change their lives forever. One evening, after experiencing severe chest pain, Clara is rushed to the emergency room. Her daughter, Maria, and granddaughter, Ava, accompany her, filled with anxiety but trusting that the doctors will provide the care she needs. Clara is admitted to a hospital where Dr. Vaughan is the attending physician. He glances over Clara's file without much interest. She's stable, Vaughan says dismissively, despite the clear signs of heart failure. When Ava pleads for a second opinion, Vaughan barely suppresses his irritation. He instructs the nurses to place Clara in a regular ward instead of the ICU, ignoring her critical condition. Clara's health continues to decline over the next few days, yet Dr. Vaughan shows no urgency. He doesn't authorize additional tests or change her treatment. The nurses, who suspect Vaughan's negligence, whisper among themselves, but no one has the courage to speak up, except for Nurse Jenny, who keeps a watchful eye on Clara's deteriorating condition. Jenny notices a pattern with Dr. Vaughan. He is dismissive, especially toward patients of color. This is not the first time she has seen it, but she's hesitant to act without proof. She silently vows to find a way to help Clara and her family. Every day, Ava and her family sit by Clara's bedside, watching helplessly as her condition worsens. Ava, ever determined, begins taking notes on her grandmother's treatment, or lack thereof. She knows something is wrong. Why isn't the doctor doing more? Ava's frustration grows by the day. She starts documenting every interaction with Dr. Vaughan and the nursing staff, detailing the lack of care Clara receives. The family prays for a miracle, but Dr. Vaughan's condescending attitude only deepens their despair. Your grandmother's old, Vaughan remarks coldly during one of his brief check-ins. These things happen at her age. There's no point in overtreating. Ava clenches her fists, holding back her anger. She knows her grandmother's age doesn't justify neglect. The healthcare system should provide the same quality of care to everyone, regardless of race or age. But Vaughan's words leave an unspoken truth hanging in the air. He doesn't value Clara's life as he would a white patient's. On the 5th day of Clara's stay, the worst happens. She slips into a coma. The family is devastated. Ava demands an explanation, but Vaughan remains aloof, blaming Clara's condition on underlying health issues. Ava pleads for immediate intervention, but Vaughan waves her off, refusing to authorize any further tests or intensive treatment. Your grandmother is in God's hands now, Vaughan says, a patronizing smirk on his face. Nurse Jenny watches from a distance, her heart aching. She knows Clara could have been saved if Vaughan had cared. But Vaughan's racism has dictated Clara's fate, and now it may be too late. Unable to remain silent any longer, Nurse Jenny approaches Ava one evening. I've seen this before, Jenny whispers, her voice shaking with fear. Dr. Vaughan, he's done this to other black patients. He doesn't care about us. He's let people die. Ava's heart sinks. This is the confirmation she's been waiting for, but also dreading. Jenny hands over confidential medical records, showing that Vaughan neglected to order key tests that could have saved Clara. The proof is damning. Ava thanks Jenny, knowing the nurse is risking her career to help them. Armed with the truth, Ava realizes it's time to fight back. She contacts a well-known civil rights lawyer, determined to make Vaughan pay for what he's done. Ava's lawyer, Marcus Davis, is a seasoned fighter for justice, particularly in cases of racial discrimination. He takes the case with a sense of purpose, recognizing the pattern of neglect and discrimination in the healthcare system. This isn't just about your grandmother, Marcus tells Ava and her family during their first meeting. This is about holding the entire system accountable. With Jenny's testimony and the medical records in hand, Marcus files a lawsuit against Dr. Vaughn and the hospital for medical malpractice and racial discrimination. The Jackson family knows this battle won't be easy. Vaughn is a well-connected doctor with powerful allies, but they are ready to expose the truth. As the lawsuit is filed, the story catches the attention of local journalists. News stations begin running segments about Mrs. Clara Jackson, the elderly black woman left to die under the care of a racist doctor. The public is outraged, and the media coverage grows by the day. Dr. Vaughn, however, remains defiant. He hires a high-profile attorney to defend his reputation, claiming the lawsuit is baseless and that Clara's death was the result of her advanced age and pre-existing conditions. But the media doesn't let up. Soon, stories begin surfacing about Vaughn's history of questionable practices toward black and minority patients. The narrative is shifting, and Vaughn's once stellar reputation is beginning to crumble. In a desperate attempt to protect its image, the hospital's administration quietly offers Clara's family a settlement. They hope that by paying the family off, they can avoid further damage to their reputation. But Ava and her family refuse the offer. They want justice, not hush money. The hospital's willingness to settle only proves that they know Vaughn was in the wrong. Ava's determination to bring Vaughn's actions to light strengthens. The hospital's board members, meanwhile, grow anxious. With protests beginning to erupt outside, they realize they can no longer hide behind closed doors. But they are not ready to fully admit fault just yet. As the legal proceedings continue, more of Vaughn's past is brought into the spotlight. Former patients and their families, many of whom are black, come forward with their own stories of medical neglect. They recall similar experiences of being brushed aside, their symptoms ignored, and vital treatments withheld. It's clear now that Vaughn's behavior wasn't an isolated incident. A pattern of racial bias and negligence emerges. These revelations led to the formation of a class action lawsuit against Vaughn and the hospital. Vaughn's career, once glittering and untouchable, begins to disintegrate in the face of these mounting accusations. Word of the lawsuit spreads beyond New York. Civil rights organizations and healthcare activists rally around the Jackson family. Protests erupt in front of the hospital, calling for systemic change in the healthcare industry. Justice for Clara becomes the rallying cry as hundreds march through the city streets. The protests grow, with activists demanding that Vaughn be stripped of his medical license and that hospitals address the deep-rooted racism within their walls. The hospital, under immense pressure, tries to distance itself from Vaughn, but it's too late. The public has made up its mind. This is a battle for justice, not just for Clara, but for all the black patients who have been mistreated. The courtroom is packed as the trial begins. Ava and her family sit in the front row, their eyes fixed on Dr. Vaughn as he takes the stand. Vaughn, confident in his privilege and connections, remains smug as he testifies, blaming Clara's death on her age and pre-existing conditions. But Marcus Davis is relentless. He presents the medical records, Jenny's testimony, and the accounts of other patients who suffered under Vaughn's care. The evidence is overwhelming, and the jury begins to see Vaughn for what he truly is, a man who allowed his racism to cloud his judgment, leading to the deaths of vulnerable black patients. Midway through the trial, a shocking revelation emerges. Marcus's team uncovers that Vaughn had altered medical records to cover up his negligence. He had falsified Clara's treatment history, making it seem as though he had ordered the proper tests and treatments. The courtroom erupts as the evidence is presented. Vaughn's lawyer scrambles to defend him, but the damage is done. The falsified records are the final nail in Vaughn's coffin, and the jury's sympathy shifts fully toward the Jackson family. After weeks of testimony and emotional courtroom scenes, the jury delivers its verdict. Dr. Vaughn is found guilty of medical malpractice and racially motivated negligence. The hospital is also held accountable for enabling his behavior. The court orders Vaughn to pay a substantial settlement to the Jackson family, and the hospital is fined for its role in allowing such behavior to persist. Vaughn's medical license is revoked, and he is left disgraced and ruined. But Ava knows this isn't the end of the fight. Vaughn may be paying the price, but there are countless others like him still operating in the shadows of the healthcare system. In the wake of the trial, Ava and her family don't rest. They use the settlement money to create the Clara Jackson Foundation, aimed at advocating for the rights of minority patients and holding the healthcare system accountable for its treatment of black patients. Protests continue across the city, and more hospitals are forced to examine their practices. Vaughn, now a disgraced former doctor, quietly leaves New York, but the stain on his name remains. The movement for justice, however, is far from over. Ava, now a prominent voice in the fight against healthcare racism, knows that her grandmother's legacy will live on. The story may have started with tragedy, but the fight for justice has only just begun.